This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Jason, and this is Sports Spectrum. You can reach us at our website, sportspectrum.com. It's a great place to go to for all the content here, including every podcast, right there at sportspectrum.com. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. That's my email. It comes directly to me, jason@sportspectrum.com. We are presented today by the International Justice Mission, IJM. So grateful to have them as partners and sponsors here with us at Sports Spectrum. They do amazing work protecting more than 150 million people from violence around the world. You can join the fight right now to end slavery in our lifetime by visiting the website ijm.org/TF and become a Freedom Partner today. We're also presented today by Compassion International, another great partner, our longest partner here at the Sports Spectrum podcast. And right now they are doing an amazing work helping children in crisis. And because of COVID-19, there's kids around the world who are living in poverty. And the issue of food has gone from hunger to starvation. They're partnering up with a bunch of pro athlete friends to fill the stadium. That's what we want you to go check out right now. Fillthestadium.com is the website. Fillthestadium.com. 70,000 kids potentially without a sponsor, left in the dark, in desperate need of help right now. Go to fillthestadium.com to learn more. Fillthestadium.com. Today on Sports Spectrum, really excited to welcome Michael Porter Sr. And of course, his son, Michael Porter Jr., is a member of the Denver Nuggets, just came off of his first full season with the Nuggets in 2019-2020, the expanded COVID-delayed bubble experience that we all watched kind of re-come together in the late summer and into the early fall. And Denver had a great run. I mean, they went all the way to the Western Conference Finals before losing to the eventual NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers. And Michael Porter Jr. had a big play in that. He really stepped up and showed the type of player that he could be in the bubble. And his dad was there with him, Michael Porter Sr. His dad's actually a coach. He spent time at Missouri quite a few years as an assistant coach and working in player development. He also had time at the University of Washington. And he was actually an upward basketball coach back in the day as well, which I love. I love upward basketball. He's a former University of New Orleans basketball player, and he and his wife, Lisa, have 8 children. 2 daughters, actually, who were on the Missouri women's hoops team. And then, of course, Michael Jr., you know, and John Tay also played on the Missouri men's basketball team. So this conversation was a lot of fun because Michael Porter Sr. takes us inside the bubble. What was that like? Watching his son and the Denver Nuggets have the success that they had. What was it like to stay connected to Jesus in the bubble with his son, Michael Porter Jr., and then just being a sports dad and kind of the lessons that he instilled in raising all of his kids, not just Michael Jr., in the faith and encouraging them. This was really a great conversation. And I told Michael at the end, I want to have him back on because there's so much more that we could talk about. But I really am glad that we were able to get Michael Porter Sr. joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Let's take a listen. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, man. Good to be here with you.
Good to have you here. We're excited to talk to you today on Sports Spectrum. And let's start with what we just finished with, which was this 12-month COVID-delayed bubble-living NBA season. And your son with the Nuggets, of course, reached all the way to the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers ended up winning it all. But the Denver Nuggets had quite a run, overcoming 2 3-1 deficits. I'm just wondering, because I know you were there, how much fun was that for you to watch your son kind of blossom, but also watch this team accomplish what it accomplished, even though it was in a weird sort of bubble setting?
For me, it was just an incredible blessing, man, to be there with Mike and and with all those other great players just kind of isolated in that bubble. I had interactions with Michael and his teammates that I wouldn't have normally been able to have had it not been for that bubble situation. I am just incredibly awed by the effort the NBA put, that they had the will and the wherewithal to create that type of situation. And I know some guys got a little cabin fever from being there so long, but man, it was an incredible situation. And for a guy like me who is heavily invested in my children,
of course,
it couldn't have been. I couldn't have asked for more, except for maybe a championship.
Right. Yeah, a lot of time left, a lot of ball game left, as they say, in this life, in this NBA career. When the pandemic hit in mid-March, did you really think that we would see a completed NBA season? Because I have my doubts, just being honest here.
I did, especially when, it really got real. We were Missouri, University of Missouri. We were at the SEC tournament, and we had just had our walkthrough and scouting report and all that morning, and we were getting ready to go play the game when we got word that the SEC tournament had been canceled because of COVID. And then that's, domino effects, all these other conferences and schools leaving their conference tournaments. And so at that point, you just didn't know. You really didn't. And the NBA played a few more days. But then when they shut down, it was like, okay, this is really, really big. So, yeah, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know if they would be able to complete the NBA season. It seems like what we knew about COVID at that point wasn't very much, other than the big stuff, China and Europe and all these other places had been infected and had come over here. And now we were starting to see people be infected and affected by it. So, that was a really, really tough time for a lot of people.
When you got to the bubble, what surprised you the most when you saw kind of the setup and what that was like?
What surprised me the most was the level of, how can I put it? The level of expertise that the NBA had marshaled to keep everyone safe. I mean, man, when I woke up in the morning, I had an app on my phone. Everybody did. You had to check in. They gave us a thermometer and an oxygen sensor to put on our finger that was connected to an app on the phone. And when you woke up, you had to take your temperature and your oxygen sensor, and it went into this app and it sent it into them. And then you had to every day get tested for COVID. And so it was just amazing how, that's what I was mostly struck by, is just how careful they're being. And then everywhere you went, you had to wear the mask. So just the level of expertise and care and the measures they went to create a safe environment.
Michael Porter Sr. is our guest on Sports Spectrum. Tell me what you learned most about yourself as a dad this year watching your son play. An NBA player, a young player, obviously has to go through some ups and downs. And this was deemed his rookie year, even though by the time we got to the bubble, it felt like he had been on that team. And everybody, who was a rookie wasn't a rookie anymore. I mean, it kind of bled into even the start of what would have normally been a new season. But what was the biggest lesson you learned as a dad watching your son this year kind of grow into what he became as a player this year?
The biggest, it wasn't really a lesson, I guess affirmation
Sure.
of what I already knew, is that, man, everybody has their own path and everything has its own process. And many times you have very little control over what happens during that process. You have a few things. You can control your effort. You can control your attitude, but you have very little control outside of that. And what I learned about myself as a dad is that you can say all these platitudes and stuff like that, but when you're going through it, it becomes really hard to concentrate on those truths. And, I saw a side of Michael that I honestly had not been acquainted with up to that point. We talk after every game, and I try to watch every single game on NBA League Pass. But actually being there and being with him after the game, and him sometimes having some frustration that he vented, just how quickly he was able to get himself back into the right mind state. I've always told him it's really hard to have positive outcomes when you allow your mentality to be negative. So you've got to vent, but at some point it's got to shift. You got to turn, and you got to concentrate on the blessings and what's going well, and the things that you have control over. And I think he's really grown in that, and I was really happy to see that.
I don't know the answer to this, so I'll ask you because I haven't talked to anybody in the bubble. But from a faith perspective, when we've had on team chaplains, we've had on some players who are strong in their faith. What was that like in the bubble, though? Did they have chaplain time? Did they have anything like that? I'm imagining maybe they didn't because of the sensitivity of only bringing a certain amount of people into the bubble. But was there a dynamic of prayer and an opportunity for players to stay connected to the Lord, those who would choose to do that?
I don't think that they did anything like that as a team.
Yeah.
But after I got there, which was I got there and was able to see Game 7 of the Utah series, from the very first day I got there all the way through the Clippers run, and then that series against the Lakers. I know Michael and I had a time together before every game. He had his routine where he would nap for a couple of hours in the afternoon, get up, shower, eat, all that stuff, and then maybe a half hour before time for him to go get the bus, we hook up and we talk, pray, just basically have a devotional time. So, and a couple of times another player joined us a few times, which was really cool. And, just for the sake of sensitivity, I won't mention who it was.
Of course.
But it's pretty cool to see, man. The Nuggets, they have some good guys on that squad, some really good guys, man, who are all over the place spiritually.
Sure.
But they're good dudes.
Yeah.
So,
well, when you watch from outside looking in, that became a team that a lot of people started to root for, I think, because they were just a fun team with some resilient players, some really talented players, and some very young players. So hopefully the future is bright and the sky is the limit as we look to the next whatever seasons that we'll have or whenever the league starts. I want to really dive into your faith a little bit. That's where we're centered at, the intersection of sports and faith and Jesus here on Sports Spectrum. So tell me about that faith, the importance Jesus has played in your life, and why that's so vital to who you are as a man.
I think people who are, well, let me phrase this the right way. I'll just talk about me.
Sure.
My faith in God and the role that Jesus plays in my life, it informs every area of my life. My relationship with my wife, my parenting, the parenting of my kids, and trying to point them in the right direction to get their feet on a path to where their faith will become their own. And, I had this, this dream that all my kids would not have to be people who learned life lessons the hard way. I wanted to be able to teach them from the Bible, and then teach them how to look at other people's lives and learn from the mistakes of others, learn from my mistakes and avoid them. But, what I found is that can work to a certain degree, but many times, man, people just have to experience life and understand that, gosh, man, I really do reap what I sow. And so I grew up in a community where in Hattiesburg, Mississippi is where I'm from. And it was just a cultural thing there to go to church. Everyone went to church. But many times after Sunday service, Monday through Saturday, for many of us, life was what we heard, what we learned in church didn't necessarily go with us and affect us the rest of the week.
Sure.
And it wasn't until, I want to say, the summer before my senior year in high school that I learned that there's a huge difference between knowing about God and really knowing him. I realized at that point, and it was through Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I learned basically, because I had gone to church my whole life, I knew lots of stats about Jesus. I knew lots of stats about what God had done in human history. And sometimes those Bible stories, those Old Testament stories and New Testament stories, just seemed so out there, man, that it, how it pertained to me and what it meant for how I should live my life wasn't readily apparent to me when I was a younger man. But when I learned and truly asked God to just come into my life and make me who I'm supposed to be, help me talk the way I'm supposed to talk and live how I'm supposed to live and think how I'm supposed to think, well, that's when my life changed. And there were some ups and downs along the way, but I feel like I have because my faith really drove a lot of my decisions when I was later in college and on through post-college years. I can't help but give glory to God for it all, man. My wife and I had, and this wasn't our plan, but we had 8 kids. And
8 kids. Let people hear that again. 8 kids, right?
8 kids, man. 8 kids. And when my 5th kid was born, my 3rd son, I had 2 girls and 5 boys, and then the baby's a girl. When that 3rd boy was born, my oldest was 5.5. So they were all bunched up in there close to age. And close in age. We had our hands full, man. We really did. It was a blessing. It was a real blessing. And my wife and I, we were on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ.
Sure.
We started off with Athletes in Action. We both played ball in college, and then some after college, and then and then we transitioned over to a different part of Campus Crusade, and so we've always tried to augment the God awareness of our children and help them see why trusting in the Lord with all your heart and not leaning necessarily on your own understanding, why that's so beneficial to human beings.
Our Sports Spectrum show today is presented by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And this past spring, most of the events that Compassion International relies on to help sponsor children in crisis were canceled due to the pandemic. And it's left nearly 70,000 kids in desperate need of help. 70,000 also happens to be the average size of many pro football stadiums around the country that were once filled and now sit mostly empty. And each of those 70,000 empty seats represents a child in crisis who needs you, who needs us to step up and fill the stadium. I want you to think about this. The cost of a couple of tickets for a pro football game, food and drinks to the game that few can attend, that can help a child for an entire year if you help donate right now to Compassion International. Here's how you can do it. You go to the website, fillthestadium.com. Fillthestadium.com. You click Give Now, and you can help fill some seats in that stadium. Fill the stadium and help children in crisis. Compassion International, fillthestadium.com. We're also presented today by IJM, the International Justice Mission, and they believe that every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. And by partnering with local authorities to rescue victims of violence, bring criminals to justice, restore survivors, and strengthen justice systems, IJM is helping to protect more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. That's a large amount of people. That's why we believe in the work that the International Justice Mission does. That's why we love having them as partners with us here at Sports Spectrum. But this is work that they cannot do alone. They need your help. They need our help. That's why I'm reaching out to you to consider joining them and becoming a Freedom Partner. Some of IJM's most loyal partners in the work of justice are these Freedom Partners. And your support of $24 or more each month helps survivors of slavery and violence from the moment they're rescued until they are fully restored. It may not seem like a lot to give, but I'm telling you, it's life-changing. So I'm encouraging you to join me in becoming a Freedom Partner today. It makes a huge difference in the world. You can visit the website, ijm.org/TF, ijm.org/TF to become a Freedom Partner, and thank you. Michael Porter Sr. is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. You wrote that letter right before the NBA draft that was published on Athletes in Action. You mentioned Athletes in Action earlier, and it was beautiful. And I'm wondering if you could take me back to 2018. Why did you want to share that letter and share it publicly? Because there's a difference between writing a letter, putting it in an envelope, handing it to your son, and just encouraging him. But this was something that you wanted others to see as well, even though you knew it was for Michael. It was really there felt like an intentionality that when people would see this, there was also more than just you writing to Michael, but it was for the gospel to be proclaimed in a lot of ways, for people to see the importance of your faith. Can you take me back to that letter?
Yeah, well, the idea for writing it came from a good buddy. We played a buddy of mine. He's my oldest daughter's godfather, but we played together with Athletes in Action. And he just thought with that moment and all of the attention on the NBA draft, and especially Michael being the number one high school player in the country at the time, that there would be so many eyes on the draft event, that it was a real opportunity to kind of maybe let people know what Michael's about and what we as a family are about and what's important to us and why. And so, my mission in life is I just want to know God, and I want to make him known. And God has given us as a family a unique platform. He's given my children, all of them, really cool platforms. And we just want to be good stewards of what God has blessed us with. And so that was I won't even say that was the primary impetus behind the letter. I really wanted Michael to know the things that I said in it. I wanted him to just to understand that while I didn't play in the NBA, I do have some idea of what he was getting ready to walk into.
Yeah.
How hard it is to live out your faith in that environment, and not necessarily because the NBA is this evil empire, but just when you are famous and when you're in the public eye, certain things happen for you that don't necessarily happen for people that don't have that platform or to you. And so you become a target, basically, for all kinds of things. And I just wanted him to know, man, I don't expect perfection. I wasn't perfect. I knew he wasn't going to be perfect. I just wanted him to know that, man, there's nothing you can do. You can talk to me about anything. You can share this with me, and I'm not going to judge you. But I do want to help you get through it and not let that be a part of who you ultimately become.
Yeah, you wrote, it was beautiful. You said, whatever it is and however it looks, build your life on what truly counts. And it's interesting because when he was selected in 2018, I think 14th overall to Denver, he had to sit out that first year. There was adversity, right? There was injuries. There wasn't there wasn't this, come into the NBA right after you're drafted and, average 20 a game and win rookie of the year, whatever. It was adversity. It was injuries and having to overcome that. What was that like for you to walk through that with him as a dad and really still rely on your faith? Because this is a moment where basketball, you don't know when you're injured. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. And the back is a tricky thing. Certainly, obviously he came back and it was wonderful to watch him have the success he had, especially in the playoffs. But what was that year like, a year and a half or so ago, almost 2 years ago, where their basketball wasn't happening?
Right. I think that it is very, very difficult as a young person with limited life experience to take what you've been taught all your life and apply it in these adverse situations. And so we talked a lot. My wife was really, really good, just in terms of helping Mike manage himself and his responsibilities. And, we were fortunate that we were able to surround him with some good folks. His older sister, moved to Denver with him and lived with him just to kind of help ease him and transition him into being a pro. Jonte, his younger brother, also lived with him for a while. So we were able to surround him. And there was a great friend of his that he met on campus at Missouri, a kid who's in full-time ministry right now. And he also lived there with Michael. And so we're just great believers in the fact that who you surround yourself with really impacts everything. And the Bible says bad company corrupts good morals. And I believe, though, that good company can bolster and accentuate good morals, reaffirm the stuff that you know is right. And also there was built-in accountability there. And so that was a blessing that Mike's first year and a half, he had all those folks around him. But that year he didn't play. That group of people, those three, so crucial to Mike and his development mentally and spiritually.
We have a lot of parents and coaches who listen to this show. Many of those are, and the majority of those, I would presume, are people of faith. Tell me about the encouragement, some of the intentional decisions that you made and how you were going to raise your kids. You mentioned that earlier about how your faith really fueled the decisions that you made to raise your kids. But talk to those parents and those coaches who are listening, maybe encourage them with some advice and some of the things in the decisions, intentional decisions that you made growing up, and even maybe the mistakes that you had to walk through as well that kind of helped shape what you ended up kind of and ultimately pursuing and how you parented.
Well, I don't know that I could give a lot of advice. I could maybe just lend some philosophical perspective that helped
Sure.
us. But, I believe that and Lisa and I, and it's so good that we talked about this stuff before we got married and even before we started having kids. When she was pregnant with Ariana, we really dove deep into this stuff. But I believe that at the moment of conception, that God puts certain gifts and abilities and wirings, bents into us, even at that point. I mean, he knit us together. He put us together for a purpose. And I believe that he did that for three reasons. One, to help us make our way in this world. He put things inside us to help us make a living. Two, to be a blessing to our fellow man. That's another reason he gives us gifts. Our gifts are not just for us. And then three, and the most important reason is he put stuff in us to help us bring glory to him, to shine light on him and what he's done in our lives. And so with that belief in mind, Lisa and I constantly prayed that God would show us what he put inside our children, what what's in them? How have you gifted them? And we wanted to feed that and help them nurture that to become the best that they could possibly be in those giftings. Because again, it was going to help them make their way, be a blessing, and bring glory to God. And so we took that seriously. It's part of the reason we homeschool all our kids. It's because we wanted to be around them. We wanted to observe them interacting. We wanted to have God give us those flashes of insight into their character and what they needed and what he put in them. And so Michael was 3 and the girls were 5 and 6. Jonte was 2. Jonte was 2. When we were in full-time Christian work, like I said, and
you were going through it.
The writing was on the wall, man. I wasn't going to have the wherewithal to send my children to college. And because of the way I grew up, I just do believe that debt, while sometimes it's unavoidable, sometimes it's avoidable, but many times it's not. I just felt like it was a curse. And you know, I had debt when Lisa and I got married. And as we were not making much money and our kids started to travel and do AAU, we accumulated more debt. And I desperately wanted my children to be able to graduate from college with no debt.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed about Michael, I'll just talk about him, at a young age, again, praying that God would show us, his fine motor skills were off the charts for a kid his age. I mean, he just picked up a bike one day and started his friend across the street bike without training wheels on it, and could ride it without ever having to have me run behind him and hold the seat and all of this. His just ability to catch and throw and at a young age was really kind of astounding. And so I'm like, okay. So I started training them, him and his sisters. The girls were tall for their age, and so their mom's tall. And again, it's just kind of being paying attention to how they played, what they were into, what they did well. And they were all athletic and all that. And so I started training them basketball-wise. And it was fun, age-appropriate stuff at first, but as time went on, they really started to love it. And I think one key to that was that age-appropriate thing. I made it fun at first. I wanted them to fall in love with the game. I didn't make it all super serious, and it was games, and let's dribble with this hand on this side of the box, this hand on the other side of the box, and then let's see who can make a shot, who can do all that, and then make a layup. But you got to keep your elbow under the ball. You can't have it flat, that kind of stuff. And they just took to it like ducks to water, man, and just started growing taller and taller and becoming better and better. And, the more success you see at anything, the more fun it is to you, especially as young people. And so we got a hoop that I could crank it and lower it down to 8 feet. I got smaller basketballs so that their little hands could fit on them in the right place. And I didn't let them shoot threes or really outside the lane early on. And so those were just some things we did to help them become better basketball players and spend time with them.
That's good. And that also helps them become better people when you're spending time with them too. So it's not just the basketball, but it's being present in their lives, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, I think the biggest thing that Lisa and I did to create and continue a relationship with my children is, so at this point we lived in Indiana. Now I don't know what you know about Indiana, but it is a different place when it comes to basketball. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, and they start so young. So growing up in that environment and seeing what we saw, because there's good and bad to it. There are some parents who are just aging are way too over the top at these youth games. Man, I saw parents slapping their kids around in the parking lot because they didn't play well. I mean, just that kind of thing. And so what Lisa and I decided to do, and this is, I think, probably the biggest thing that we did, is we decided when our kids played, we weren't going to immediately start talking to them about the game and what they could do better or what they didn't do so well. But we just wanted to tell them, man, I love watching you play. I love watching you play, man. And helping them, trying to send the message that, dude, I love you, not who you are as a player. I wanted my kids to be good, but I could care less if they play basketball. We didn't push them into that at all. But I wanted to have the type of relationship where when a Michael is getting ready to go into the NBA draft, I could write that letter and it could mean something. He could know that I meant it because I had demonstrated it over years, that it wasn't just for show.
That's really good. He is Michael Porter Sr. And listen, we appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks for joining us here. This was a really great conversation. I'm thankful to have you on. Thank you, sir.
Hey, man. Anytime, Jason. Take care, bro.
Thanks to Michael Porter Sr. for joining us today on Sports Spectrum. I love talking to him. I mean, I can relate to him as a dad and as a dad to a daughter who plays sports. I just want the best for her. I pray for her. I encourage her. And that's really just being present in her life. That's really what Michael Porter Sr. kind of landed on. And it's such a unique situation that he's in, being the dad to an NBA, really a blooming NBA superstar. Michael Porter Jr. had a really good rookie year that manifested itself pretty well in the bubble, watching him do his thing and leading the Nuggets, along with his teammates, of course, to the Western Conference Finals before losing to the Lakers. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks to Michael Porter Sr. He's on Twitter at Coach Porter and then the number 8, Coach Porter 8. He's on Twitter. Let him know that you heard his story here today on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We thank Michael Porter Sr. We thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Do us a favor, click that subscribe button on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum. We tell the stories of sports and faith here. That's what we do. We love Jesus, we love sports, and we intersect the two together to bring you these conversations. And we're so grateful. We're over 2 million downloads of the podcast now. It's growing. We have a podcast network of shows that we really are excited about, all kinds of different conversations in the world of sports intersecting faith in Christ. So we're glad that you tuned in, and we're thankful to you for listening. We're also thankful to our sponsors today. Just give a shout out to our friends at IJM, the International Justice Mission. Check them out at ijm.org/TF, ijm.org/TF. You can become a freedom partner and help them in the fight against violence and oppression. And then our friends at Compassion International. We call them the most trusted child development ministry in the world, and that's what they are. But right now, the Fill the Stadium initiative is a great way for you to team up with Compassion and pro athletes and help save these children who are in dire need of support. In some cases, starvation is taking place with these children. So you got to go check out fillthestadium.com to learn more and get involved. fillthestadium.com. Thanks so much for tuning in again. My name's Jason Romano. Love you guys. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Please do stay safe.